Well, we're just picking up where we left off in some of the holes that we had. You know, we tried to do a lot in the first chunk of lessons, but now we have a year under our belt, and we get to get comments from students and know the things that they want that we weren't covering. So we're covering a couple of those things. A lot of guys want to learn how to play fast, so we're trying to get that, the speed techniques going, which really the best way to learn how to play fast is learn how to play slow. And that's one of the things people don't really realize. If you can do it slowly and articulate the notes and get through them slowly, then you can speed that up, and pretty soon your speed becomes much more valuable than just kind of like learning everything going straight to the speed. We're trying to get everybody's scales and arpeggios up to speed, and just a little bit of everything. This course covers a lot, and there's a lot of curriculum, and I think if you sit down and go through it all, you'll definitely notice an improvement in your playing, and that's what we're all here to do, is get better. Absolutely. This is an online interactive course that we encourage the dialogue and of course the video responses, and so we don't know exactly what you want unless you tell us. So that's the beauty of this course, is we really have that personal relationship, and I'm here to address a lot of the questions and try to be as involved with the one-on-one communication with my students as possible. Well, I started a long time ago when I was living in San Diego, and I used to teach privately, but when I got busy and started doing recording sessions and traveling all around the world, I didn't have the time to do it anymore. And that's why this program came in handy, because it really gives me a chance to communicate with students. And I've actually met students around the world, in Asia and Europe, that it just makes it feel like I'm able to get back in touch with students again, and via this course. I grew up in San Diego. I was born in Philadelphia, but we moved to San Diego when I was at an early age. I was about 4 years old, so I would go back and forth to Philly and the East Coast during the summertime and try to keep some of the connections going there. But San Diego, and then I've lived in Los Angeles for about 30 years now. Yes, I picked up my first bass on the altar at Christ the King Church, in Southeast San Diego. And it was one of those things where I just had this thing in my hand, and it was one of those days where I said, there's something happening now that, life will never be the same again. Well, I was tagging along with my older brothers that were playing for the folk masses, and so for some of the services around San Diego. So by tagging along, younger brother, and there just happened to be a bass sitting on the stage and on the altar on the stage. And, my brothers were playing, my older brother played guitar, so I was kind of trying to learn the shapes and everything, but my fingers weren't really getting the guitar. And when I saw the bass, it just, I picked this thing up, and next thing you know, I'm making music on it, And it immediately spoke to me, and I felt like, yeah, this is something I can do something with. Well, my first bass lessons were listening to the radio and buying records. Once a lot of Motown records were out, so I heard all this James Jamerson, all this great bass playing there. And then the Beatles were out, so I'm listening to McCartney, and then I started picking up on a lot of bands back then. Cream, so I'm learning those songs just by ear. I had a pretty good ear to start with, so that helps a lot. But it was sort of late. I was 14 when I picked up the bass, so I wasn't really young, like 4 or 5 years old. But even at that point, I could kind of get the hang of what was going on and start try to join as many bands as I could, and I dove into music head first. It's a good question. First of all, there were great songs by, I remember Aretha Franklin had song called Till You Come Back to Me. Stevie Wonder wrote it, and Chuck Rainey played bass on that song, and it was just the most amazing bass part. It's like an encyclopedia of bass. And Chuck Rainey actually, at that point, he was doing a lot of Quincy Jones records. He was doing everything. He was like the studio guy, you know, along with James Jamerson. So I learned, you know, when the song Respect came out, and a lot of those songs, the bass was just pumping in those things. So Till You Come Back to Me was. And he had all these chords that he was doing. I was going, what's going on in the bass? And he had he had literally all of that was on this record. You know? Well, I had to take the needle and then play it a few times, but yeah, I learned all that by ear. You know, just an encyclopedia bass player. And at that same time, groups like Earth, Wind and Fire, Kool and the Gang, Chicago, Blood, Sweat and Tears, Tower of Power, all these bands with all these great, you know, superstar bass players, Rocco Prestia, Verdine White, and, you know, so my ear just went right to the bass on all those records. It didn't take a couple of years. By the time I was 16, I was on tour with Barry White and the Love Unlimited Orchestra. And yes, later on, he called me to play on his studio record. So I started playing around 1978, 79 in the studio with him. Ecstasy, When You Lay Down Next to Me, and Just the Way You Are, and some of those songs. Not the earlier ones, like I'm Gonna Love You. That was actually Wilton Felder, who plays in the Crusaders, playing bass on that. But yeah, exactly. Every night, yeah, every night. So that was a blast too. You know, you imagine 16 years old in a tuxedo, you know, playing Madison Square Garden with Barry White and the Love Unlimited Orchestra. It was like, really? They were excited, you know, just to know that their son was kind of playing with one of the big timers, you know, and you know, we played Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. We played the Apollo Theater, Detroit Cobo Hall, you know, so all around the country. And I'm thinking, man, it doesn't get any better than this. So I think I was being groomed for a life of touring at that time. Pretty much it's been, and I'm not talking about just any tour. I mean, it's been one amazing tour after the next. The guys in Toto are just supreme musicians, you know, and every one of them is actually a friend of mine. We've known each other for 30 years, and we just toured all over Europe and the United States. We've been to Japan together, so that's just it's like a brotherhood, you know, touring with them. And of course my Foreplay brothers, you know, being a founding member of that group, and we started that group 23 years ago, believe it or not. And we've had 2 guitar players since Lee Ritenour. We had Larry Carlton joined for about 12 years, and now for about the last few years, Chuck Loeb, who's an amazing guitar player, has joined us. And we're picking up our tour right now. Yeah, Bob James was doing a recording in 1990. It's called Grand Piano Canyon. Great album if you haven't heard it. There's some good bass playing on there. Actually, Abraham Laboriel's on there. But he had Lee Ritenour and Harvey Mason as his rhythm section. And he asked both of them, he said, hey, who should I get for bass? You know, they both recommended me, which, you know, I'll be forever grateful to them for recommending me. So we went into the studio and just had a ball, you know. And if you listen to that album, you can kind of hear that that's like the very first Foreplay record, because it's kind of the songs that we played on, especially this song called Restoration. It just sounds like this was our first time getting together, and that's when he approached the band about forming a band, and so 23 years ago. He has a massive catalog, as you know, and we've been trying to get him to let us play his songs for many, many years. So now we do, as an encore, we play the song Westchester Lady, and yeah, it's one of my favorites. Oh yeah. Matter of fact, in the show I have to start it. Yeah. Nautilus, yeah, that's the other one that everybody samples and requests.
Can you throw it on that bass line real fast?
Now, how does Nautilus go? Let me see. Oh yeah, yeah. See, yeah, I get you to play. Yeah, he's a brilliant writer. Absolutely, absolutely. He's not so far, but I can't finish it without him. I'm co-producing with Chris Giro, who is the president of the label Yamaha Entertainment Group, and he's also he's the director of all the Yamaha Artist Relations programs in the States. That's a great question. There are two things. One thing I always thought was, I mean, I literally work every day. I haven't stopped working, I don't think, since 1980. You know, literally, there's always a project going on, and whether it's an Eric Clapton or Phil Collins, Kenny Loggins, you know, you name it. I mean, they keep me pretty busy in LA. So one of the things I thought to myself is, well, if I make a record, I'm not going to be able to properly support it if I'm still going out touring with everybody else, you know. And it just, maybe it was not the right philosophy, but I just thought, when I make a record, I want to be able to sort of devote some time to that and see if I can, you know, get my career off the ground. But in the meantime, how do you do that when you're having the most fun you've ever had in your life, you know, with all the people that you love playing with? And that's been a little bit of the dilemma, just being very busy. And number two is actually just trying to figure out, you know, how do I, you know, what statement do I make? Because the bass is a unique instrument. It's very supportive, and I wasn't really sure exactly what I wanted to say, or, you know. And there are a lot of bass players that make records, but my record is not as much of a shredding type of record. It'll be more song based and just try to keep you know, some good bass lines in there. But I wasn't one of these kind of bass players that wanted to make a real shred record, you know, for whatever reason, because those guys are out there, and I respect them immensely. But I feel like, you know, that's what they do, and I kind of bring another thing to the table. Music's been in my brain the whole time, and I have like just dozens of demos and ideas that have cultivated over the years. You know, they're like in a graveyard right now. But as I went to make this record, we sat down and we got a big whiteboard out, and we just named all of my favorite types of music, all my favorite musicians, people that, you know, would be on my wish list to play on the record, kind of like a dream band. And most of those people, you know, came to the table already. You know, Michael Thompson, who was here, you know, we've recorded a lot and made a lot of music together. Ricky Lawson, who played drums on my tracks that I use for the curriculum, he was available. And Jeff Babko, who is the keyboard player on Jimmy Kimmel, amazing keyboard player, he was available. So that was my core rhythm section. You know, the four of us played, and then David Page from Toto just happened to be in the area, dropped by, and he got on the record. He wrote something, and he also played on a few songs. And then I saved some room for my buddy Eric Clapton. You know, we recorded "Can't Find My Way Home," so we do that live, and I sing it with him. So I thought it'd be fun to record that song. So we did that. I have a piece that Stevie Wonder played harmonica on, and so it's just great to have these guys as friends, and to be able to ask them if they can come join us. And so I want Bob James on there. Harvey Mason was busy the week that we tracked, so I called him and he couldn't make it in. So that's when Ricky came and played. And then Chuck Loeb was able to come in and actually bring a song. So he brought a song with him that our birthdays are both in December. Mine's the 8th, is the 7th and the 8th. So he wrote a song in 7/8 called 7/8. So we did that, and now it's coming together really well. For 30 years, every day I go into the studio, and what you do is you do your best. And sometimes you walk out of there thinking, this is going to be a big record, it's the greatest thing. You feel really good about it. Never does a thing. Nobody ever hears it after that day. And the opposite of that is sometimes I come out, it was okay, and then you hear it, it blows up, it's all over the radio. And then sometimes they somewhere in the middle. For me, the common element is every single day I went in there, I tried to play, I do the best I could. I didn't one day, because it's Daft Punk, now I'm really going to play today. So I was doing my job, but the thing that I noticed about the Daft Punk record was, first of all, I heard Nile Rodgers playing guitar on that thing, and he's in a class of his own. And they played me one song, and actually it was Nile Rodgers and Paul Jackson Jr. playing on the same song, and I just thought, you can't get any funkier than that, those two guys. JR's on drums, and JR was here, right? So they put up the track, and for bass we just kept throwing down ideas, So in Pro Tools we would just play along with what was going on, just try to make it as funky. Okay, what else you got? Okay, how about this? What else? How about this? So we stacked up about a half a dozen parts, and I didn't know which one they would use till I heard the record. And again, I walked out of the studio. I thought, oh man, this is great. I was telling my buddy that played with Daft Punk on this new album, but I never in a million years could have predicted that. Just a worldwide explosion of this record. Literally, when everybody goes in the studio, that's what they're trying to do: make a record that the whole world is going to fall in love with and go crazy over. But this particular time, 2013, I think that song is the most downloaded song and most uploaded, most streamed, it's the most played, it's just crazy. I love the album. It's one of the albums too, and to me that's what an album should be, and I think the entire record industry could learn that, don't just put two good songs on an album, make the whole thing great, and I think that's what those guys did. I don't know a single person that does not like that album, and people that like everything, jazz and whatever. I just got an email from Pat Metheny, and he said, we've been listening to you all summer. Daft Punk is our summer favorite around the house, and he said his kids love it, and across the board, it just turned into a great record. It also made room for people that thought, it's not cool to play anymore. Everybody was kind of starting to get used to the idea of synths and machines making records. So this kind of said, okay, hey, wait a second. All we're doing is going back 30, 40 years to the retro sound. And it was fun to go into the studio with those guys and see, just all these old Roland synthesizers and all this old kind of retro gear. It really does. I'm proud of those guys and happy for them. But again, they have all the sounds, and you can make a great record with the synth-based sound. So I think the takeaway is what we all got into music for. We love real music. We love live players making it. Many years ago when the Beatles came on Ed Sullivan and people were going crazy and losing their mind, it wasn't because somebody brought a machine up there and hit go, and it wasn't a computer, and it was four guys that people were saying, who's that? And then you can just say that about everybody that you've ever loved, whether it's Sly and the Family Stone, whoever, Frank Sinatra, Elvis Presley, across the board, it's been somebody that's making music from their heart, and I'm so happy that it's okay to actually play music, because for a while, you start to think, oh, wait a second, where is the real music? Well, for me, it's been easy only because I just love music and I love all kinds of music. So when I got the call to go on tour with Kenny Loggins, Al Jarreau, Eric Clapton, I already knew all their songs just from either playing them in garage bands of my own, top 40 bands. And so being a music lover myself, and I think anybody that wants to get into the business and learn music, I mean, you have to know a lot of songs, and those songs, whether you listened and learned them from the radio or got a video or went to an online school, this is what we need to know, so that when we go to have this conversation in this language that we all speak, called music, you have a vocabulary. So I've been lucky because ever since I started, I was in bands, and our bands played, we played Quincy Jones songs, Herbie Hancock, but then we played Beatles, Chicago, Blood, Sweat and Tears, James Brown, we just played everybody, so I feel very fortunate. I had a lot of music in me, and I knew a lot of songs. And when I came to LA, so even if you've never played with somebody before, they're impressed when you go into the studio and then you play one of their songs, And that's what a few of us do, as studio musicians, what have you. When we go in there to play with a new artist, and we let them know, oh yeah, we've been listening to you. We know what you got, I mean, it's very important. I think one of the reasons I went and actually got a degree in music at UCSD in San Diego was I felt like, well, if I'm going to be serious about this, I want to arm myself with as many tools as possible. I don't want to kind of go up here, and I wouldn't move to LA without knowing how to read music, because just that skill alone probably got me, loads and loads of work. Especially in the TV and movie world and the jingle world, where you have to, you have to read through 10, 11 pieces of music in a very short amount of time.
There's probably no way to fake that if you can.
No, no matter how good your ear is, sometimes you don't have the benefit of hearing it. So for me, it was important for me to just have, a big toolbox when I went up to LA. So I did study music and try to get my act together in terms of just the theory. Theory is very important. Again, my children are learning music and they can play, but equally important, we have them in theory as well. This was my first time playing with Paul Gilbert right here in the Artist Works studio. I mean, I'm a big fan and I love his program. Paul Gilbert instantly turned into one of my favorite people. I love his spirit and energy when I watch his lessons, but when we met and wrote up, we had a good laugh, and it took no time to mesh musically with him. We had a great time. I know he obviously knows a lot of songs as well. So we could be in a band right now. We could go do a gig, I'm just sure, calling songs, And he's a wonderful musician, great teacher, and I have nothing but good to say about Paul Gilbert. So I've had my class open now for about a year, and it's a good, actually, learning opportunity for me to see what students are actually really interested in. It's been great to meet some of my students out on tour. I mean, everywhere from Japan to Finland. I've met folks that are students, and now I get a lot of people sending me messages on Facebook or Twitter saying, I'm going to sign up for your course pretty soon, you know, so that's always exciting. And for me, it's a great opportunity to get back into what I feel is one of the most important things about what we do, is just educating people. And if there's a way for me to give back or impart any of the wisdom that I have, this has become a great vehicle for me to do that. And I've learned now, I'm learning more about the site and how it works, and how to get my video responses up a lot faster, and there's blogging. And so this is an online community of musicians, you know, not only bass players, but musicians from around the world, great players. And I think it's an incredible opportunity for all the people that are involved to learn from each other, and to really just come in here and have be a part of a very exclusive club. So I think the most important thing is you have to have fun doing what you're doing, because for me, it never felt like work, even if I'm working on a hard passage. But it has to be fun, and you have to love it. And you can tell when people have fun. And by the way, I've gotten some video responses that actually just blew my mind when people take the time to really send in a good video, and their tone is good, and their time is good, and all the things that we like to see in a player. And I want to encourage my students to continue to send in, but I've got some recently that I can see improvement over the years' time, that it just really warmed my heart to see that students have come that far, you know. So I encourage everybody to keep on. If I were to pick a lesson, it depends, because I love playing all the chord melody stuff. So America the Beautiful, which is probably the last thing I taped, is one of the things I enjoy playing a lot, and you know, that was based on a Jaco Pastorius arrangement, and I kind of took a little bit and made it my own. So that's one of my fun lessons, but I enjoyed all of them. You know, playing the blues is always fun, jazz, some of the progressions, harmonies, anything that just makes you sound like you actually know what you're doing when you have this thing in your hands.